Emily Bynon is the principal flute player with the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. She's one of the greatest flute players in the world. I love her playing, and she's here in Sydney. I just witnessed a masterclass of Emily's where she was incredibly kind, insightful and inspirational to the young players. And I just had a couple of questions I wanted to ask Emily. First off, if you had one thing to practice on the flute, what's the most important thing for you?
To practice, I think if I could only have one flute exercise on my desert island, I think it would have to be harmonics.
You love harmonics.
I love harmonics. I think harmonics are, if you consider the low register of the flute as being like open strings on the violin, everything we do above that is based on different speeds of air and fingering combinations based on that low octave. And so I think that practicing harmonics, both from low notes getting higher notes and from third octave, getting the two sort of fake notes underneath, I think are really, really crucial. So if I had one exercise that allowed me one thing to practice, it would be harmonics.
Emily, you have such a beautiful big sound, and you also have an ability to sound like a piece of gossamer or to change your colour. And I noticed today in the masterclass with the younger players that you were encouraging them to dig deeper. I think that was your word. Could you talk about imagination in music? Alain Marion, who we both studied with, Alain said, painters paint with sound and musicians play with colour. And that always resonated in my heart. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very much. And I think a flute sound is not very interesting, but pushing it to the limits of intensity and getting the most kind of the darkest, most edgy sound, or the wispiest, transparent sort of piano colours. I think that's the fun of it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a passion for me. Looking back at my time with Alain Marion and Jean-Pierre Rampal, I think the French players, particularly the Rampal school and Alain Marion, were really proving constantly that anything you can do with the voice, you can also do with the flute. What are your comments about that?
I think we all want to make a beautiful sound, don't we?
Yeah.
But a beautiful sound is only beautiful when it's contrasted with something which is maybe less beautiful and maybe very rough, or maybe very with a lot of air in the sound. And I think that particularly younger players are so conscious of having a good flute sound that they're scared to sort of push the limits to what is feasible. And so I use the voice a lot when I'm teaching. I ask them to sing, I ask them to talk, I ask them to
and I noticed in the class you're singing a lot.
Yeah, terrible, isn't it?
No, it's great. But
I think it's we're braver with our voices because we've had our voices all our lives, and with our flute voice that's relatively new, and we're very conscious of making a nice flute sound. And I think that to make music interesting, you need more variety than that, basically.
the sound as something that you stamp on top of your playing, as opposed to the sound that's something that is instinctive and intrinsically your voice, it's worth really thinking about when you're developing as a younger player.
I mean, it is your voice. I mean, it's your musical voice,
That's
isn't
right.
it? The flute, and so in the same way as we can shout or whisper, we can do that with the flute as well. And sometimes shouting is appropriate, sometimes whispering is appropriate, and we need different articulation for that. We need different use of our air for that, and so I think just experiment. I'd encourage any flute player, any music player, to leave 5 minutes at the end of every practice session to just experiment and just see what comes out and explore the instrument and the sounds that it can make. And who knows, maybe you'll throw away 99% of it, but you might find the gem of one colour which turns out to be the key of a particular sonata or a particular piece or something.
Yeah.
So that's right.
And finally, Emily, you're the principal flute player in one of the greatest, if not the greatest, orchestra in the world. What would you say to young players who are auditioning for an orchestral position? Is there anything particular that you could offer as advice in preparing for an audition?
I think it's really, really important to know the score. The piece in its entirety, and that means horizontally and vertically. You know, you're playing one line of a score of maybe 30 parts, and you're playing a few bars of a symphony that might last, you know, an hour or something. So to have an understanding of where that solo fits in the texture of the orchestra and in the context of the entire work, I think is absolutely crucial. And I found that a lot of flute players, you know, when I say, have you listened to a recording? They have, and they've been very diligent, they've listened to everything that the flute player's done. But the flute part is there. You're playing the flute part, so what you should be doing is listening to the rest of it. Right. So you can take that orchestra in your head into the audition.
And I noticed today when you were teaching Daphnis and Chloe to a younger player, you asked the player if she knew the double bass part, which she sort of did. So I guess that's an example of while you're playing the solo, you really need to feel in your body somewhere in another molecular system that you've got that music inside you. Yeah. Do you change your vibrato, or do you change the way you project the sound when you're in an orchestra as opposed to being in a recital? Is there a difference for you?
Not a huge difference, I would say. Maybe I use a different sort of part of the dynamic spectrum at times, but I mean in the orchestra I'm required to play, you know, far softer than maybe I would even dare in a recital, and far louder. So I think for my first orchestral experience, professional orchestral experience ever, I was overwhelmed by the dynamic range of what I was hearing around me. And I think it's important in audition, you know, it's such an abstract sort of concept.
Yeah.
Going and playing such a small part. But showing the jury what your range of, for example, dynamics or colours or staccatos or vibratos or whatever it is, showing that in the repertoire that's on the list, I think is really important. And you can only do that really intelligently if you have an understanding of the whole work, I think. And
Emily, thank you so much. Where can we find your wonderful recordings, and where can we find you on the
Well, I have a website, www.emilybynon.com, and there's information about my various recordings. And,
This girl is solid gold. Don't miss out on her. Thank you so much. And Australia looks forward to welcoming you back soon.
I look forward to coming back. I love Australia.
We love you.